Welcome back, everyone. In today's video, we're going to dive deep into two manipulative tactics that can slowly destroy your confidence and make you question your worth. These are subtle, yet incredibly powerful strategies that manipulators use to gain control over you. The first is when they try to erode your self-belief, and the second is when they offer a fake reconciliation, all to reel you back in. But here's the thing, Stoic wisdom offers us the tools we need to recognize and protect ourselves from these manipulative moves. If you've ever felt your confidence wavering or been sucked back into a toxic relationship after someone apologized, then this video is for you. Stay tuned, because by the end, you'll know exactly how to protect your peace, rebuild your strength, and stand firm in your own power. Number 1. They try to shame you publicly. Let's talk about one of the most harmful tactics manipulators use to break your spirit: public shaming. This is not just about criticizing you privately or behind closed doors. It's about exposing you in front of others to make you feel small, embarrassed, and powerless. Whether it's a comment meant to embarrass you or a sarcastic remark designed to make you feel inferior, they want to strip you of your dignity and control the narrative around your character. The truth is, public shaming is a calculated attempt to undermine your confidence and your place in the group. It's about isolating you emotionally, making you doubt yourself, and ensuring you never feel fully secure in your own skin. The goal is simple: make you feel like you're not enough, like you don't belong, or like everyone else is judging you. But here's where Stoic philosophy can protect you. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The opinions of others are not my concern." This is a powerful reminder that you don't need to absorb the criticism of others, especially when it's unjust. Let me share a quick story. A guy I know, let's call him Mike, worked at a company where a colleague, jealous of his recent promotion, would constantly belittle him in front of the team. At first, Mike would laugh it off, but over time, these remarks started to wear him down. He began questioning his decisions, doubting his abilities. Then one day, he remembered a key Stoic principle: you control how you respond. Mike stopped reacting to the jabs and started focusing on his work and his goals. Slowly, his colleagues began to see the truth in his actions, and the manipulator's attempts at shaming him fell flat. So how do you handle someone trying to shame you publicly? First, recognize it for what it is: an attack on your self-worth. Second, stay grounded in your sense of value. Don't let their words define you. Third, hold your composure. Responding with dignity shows that their manipulation doesn't affect you. At the end of the day, public shaming only works when you let it. By embracing Stoic resilience and not letting others control your narrative, you can regain your power and stop them from using shame to manipulate you. Number 2, they play the victim. One of the most manipulative tactics a person can use is playing the victim. This is when they twist the narrative to make it seem like they're the one who's suffering, despite being the one causing harm. It's not about taking responsibility for their actions. It's about deflecting blame and shifting it onto you. They act as if they've been wronged or mistreated, making you feel guilty or responsible for their emotional state, even when you've done nothing to deserve it. Here's the truth. Playing the victim is a manipulation strategy designed to gain sympathy and avoid accountability. They use your empathy against you, making you feel sorry for them, even though they're the ones who created the problem in the first place. It's emotional manipulation at its finest. When they can't win through logic, they rely on your compassion to get what they want. They'll say things like, "Why does this always happen to me?" Or, "I can't believe you're treating me this way." But here's the key to breaking free from this manipulation. Recognize that it's a game. As the Stoics remind us, we can't control what others do to us, but we can control how we respond. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." So when someone plays the victim, don't feel compelled to take on their burdens. Instead, stand firm in your own truth and set clear boundaries. Let me share a quick story. A woman I know, let's call her Sarah, had a friend who always played the victim. No matter the situation, her friend would say things like, "I can't believe this always happens to me," or "I never get a break." At first, Sarah would try to comfort her, but over time she realized that her friend wasn't looking for help. She was looking for attention. Sarah began to notice a pattern. Every time Sarah made a decision that didn't align with her friend's wishes, the victim narrative would emerge. Eventually, Sarah stopped taking on the emotional burden and started holding her friend accountable. So, how do you handle someone who plays the victim? First, recognize that this tactic is designed to make you feel guilty for their emotions. Second, stop rescuing them. If they want to take responsibility, they need to own their actions. Third, set boundaries. You don't need to sacrifice your peace for someone else's drama. At the end of the day, manipulative people who play the victim don't want solutions. They want control. By refusing to buy into their narrative and standing strong in your own integrity, you can break free from their emotional grip. Number 3, they start spreading subtle lies. One of the most insidious tactics a manipulator uses is spreading subtle lies. These aren't bold, obvious falsehoods, but small, almost imperceptible distortions of the truth that over time chip away at your credibility, your reputation, or your sense of reality. They're the kind of lies that might seem harmless at first, but with repeated exposure, they build a web of confusion and doubt. It could be something as simple as telling someone, "I heard you said X," or "I think they misunderstood you." They plant these seeds of doubt to create division and confusion. Here's the truth. Subtle lies are dangerous because they don't immediately trigger your defense mechanisms. They're disguised as casual comments, or they're woven into a larger narrative of truth, making them hard to recognize. Over time, these small lies erode trust, especially if you don't confront them. The goal is to confuse you and others, ultimately turning people against each other or making you question your own experiences and perceptions. It's a form of gaslighting. They twist the truth just enough to make you start questioning your own memory, your own actions, and even your own worth. These manipulators thrive on this confusion because it gives them control. Once they've successfully undermined your sense of reality, they've won. This is where Stoic wisdom offers a powerful shield. As Marcus Aurelius said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." In other words, these lies may seem like obstacles, but recognizing them for what they are can lead you to greater clarity and strength. When faced with manipulation, the Stoic approach is to focus on what you can control: your responses, your boundaries, and your actions. Let me share a story. A man I know, let's call him Jake, had a colleague who would subtly spread lies about him in the workplace. At first, the lies were small. "I heard Jake said X about you," or "Jake doesn't really care about this project, he just wants the credit." Jake would dismiss it at first, but over time these lies started gaining traction. His relationships at work became strained. People who once supported him now questioned his intentions. Jake could have reacted impulsively, confronting his colleague and possibly escalating the situation. But instead, he took a step back and used the Stoic practice of mindfulness. He focused on what he could control: his work ethic, his character, and his integrity. He began addressing the lies calmly, with facts, but without getting emotionally drawn into the drama. Slowly, the truth became evident, and the lies fell apart. Jake's reputation remained intact because he refused to let subtle lies steer him off course. So how do you handle someone who spreads subtle lies? First, recognize the tactic for what it is: an attempt to manipulate perceptions. Second, don't engage emotionally. Stick to the facts and maintain your integrity. Third, set clear boundaries with those who spread false information. Protect your peace and your reputation. At the end of the day, subtle lies can only control you if you allow them to. When you remain grounded in truth and clarity, the lies will lose their power. Stand firm, stay focused, and don't let someone else's manipulation derail your sense of self. Number 4, they try to isolate you. One of the most effective ways a manipulator tries to gain control is by isolating you from others. This tactic is subtle, often masked as concern or care, but its goal is clear: to separate you from the people who support you, so that you become more dependent on them and less likely to question their behavior. They'll suggest that certain people aren't good for you, or that you should focus only on them because they're the ones who truly care. Over time, this creates a distorted sense of reality, where you begin to rely more and more on the manipulator, cutting off your support system without even realizing it. Here's the truth: isolation is a strategy used to weaken you. Without the opinions and guidance of others, you become more susceptible to manipulation. When you're alone, you might start doubting yourself, questioning your decisions, and even your value. The manipulator doesn't want you to feel empowered by the support of others. They want to control the narrative and your sense of self-worth. The Stoic perspective on this is incredibly valuable. Epictetus taught that freedom is the only true possession. And true freedom comes from not being beholden to anyone for your worth or validation. When you're not dependent on others for your sense of self, isolation loses its power. The Stoic belief is that you are in charge of your own mind, and no one can truly isolate you unless you allow them to. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Sarah, was in a relationship where her partner slowly began isolating her from her friends and family. At first, it was subtle. He would say, "I thought you said you'd spend the weekend with me." Or, "Don't you think your friends are distracting you from what's important?" Gradually, Sarah found herself spending less time with her loved ones. Her partner made her feel like she needed to choose between them and everyone else in her life. At first, Sarah didn't realize what was happening, but over time she noticed that when she was away from him, she felt freer and more confident. When she was with him, however, she felt small, doubtful, and unsure. That's when she realized he had been isolating her, cutting her off from the people who genuinely cared for her and who would have noticed the manipulation. So how do you respond when someone tries to isolate you? First, recognize the tactic for what it is. Isolation is about control, not concern. Second, trust your support system. Reach out to friends, family, and others who remind you of who you are. Third, maintain your boundaries. Don't let anyone convince you that isolating yourself from others is in your best interest. At the end of the day, the more you are surrounded by people who love and support you, the harder it is for anyone to manipulate you. Isolation is only effective when you let it happen. Remember, no one can make you feel small without your consent. By staying connected to the world around you and protecting your relationships, you maintain your strength and prevent manipulation from taking root. Number 5, they use guilt to make you comply. One of the most emotionally draining tactics a manipulator will use is guilt. It's a subtle but powerful form of emotional manipulation designed to make you feel responsible for their emotions and actions. Rather than having an open, honest discussion, they'll bypass logic and reason, going straight for your heart. They'll use your empathy, your kindness, and your sense of responsibility to bend you to their will. It may sound like, after everything I've done for you, you're going to let me down now? Or, I guess none of that mattered, huh? They won't say, I'm trying to control you, but that's exactly what's happening. It's emotional blackmail designed to make you feel ashamed for having your own boundaries, opinions, or independence. Here's the truth. Manipulators guilt trip because they know it works. They know that you care about them, that you have a conscience, and that you're thoughtful. Instead of respecting those qualities, they exploit them to get you to do what they want. They don't need to raise their voice or create a scene. A disappointed tone and a few loaded words are all it takes for you to start questioning your decisions and giving in. The Stoic perspective is invaluable in situations like this. As Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Guilt, when wielded by manipulators, isn't about healing. It's about control. If they can't guide you with honesty and transparency, they'll try to steer you with shame. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Danielle, had a relative who constantly used guilt to control her. Whenever Danielle made a decision that was best for her, like taking a job out of state, her aunt wouldn't congratulate her. Instead, she'd say, "I guess family doesn't matter to you anymore." And whenever Danielle couldn't attend every gathering or do every favor, the aunt would reply with, "After everything I've done for you." At first, Danielle tried to be understanding and kept overextending herself. She said yes when she meant no, slowly draining herself of energy and peace. But one day, Danielle paused and asked herself a simple but powerful question. Would I ever speak to someone I love the way she speaks to me? That was the turning point. Danielle stopped responding out of guilt and began acting from a place of self-respect. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but it was transformative. She stopped allowing guilt to control her and started honoring her own needs and boundaries. So how do you respond when someone uses guilt to control you? First, recognize the manipulation for what it is. It's not love, it's control. Second, take a moment to pause before reacting. Ask yourself, am I doing this because I truly want to, or because I'm afraid of what will happen if I don't? Number 6, they try to destroy your confidence. One of the cruelest tactics manipulators use when they've lost control is to try to destroy your confidence. This is more than just winning an argument or making you feel bad in the moment. It's systematic, calculated, and subtle. At first, it may seem harmless. Small jabs, underhanded comments, or questions disguised as concern. But over time, it adds up. They are chipping away at your self-belief, pushing you to doubt yourself, your choices, and your worth. Here's the truth. When a manipulator can't control you directly, they try to undermine your self-worth. By making you doubt your judgment, your abilities, and your instincts, they break your confidence and make you more reliant on them. If they can make you question your decisions, your strength, and your intuition, they've won. They don't need to manipulate you through direct control. They can simply make you unsure of yourself. The goal? For you to stop trusting yourself and start seeking their approval again. And that's exactly what they want. They want you to crawl back to them, not because they've earned your trust, but because they've shattered your confidence, making you dependent on them. This is where Stoic wisdom comes into play. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And Naval Ravikant put it perfectly when he said, "The first step in silencing a strong mind is to convince it that it's broken." But here's the truth. You are not broken. You're under psychological attack by someone who fears your strength. Your confidence threatens them because it reminds them of everything they lack. Let me share a story. A guy I know, let's call him Chris, was in a relationship where anytime he achieved something, his partner would downplay it. If he got a promotion, she'd say, "Must be nice when you know the right people." If he made an important decision, she'd ask, "Are you sure that's the smart move?" At first it seemed harmless, just casual remarks. But over time, they chipped away at his confidence. Chris started second-guessing everything. He went from being decisive and sure of himself to being unsure and hesitant. He stopped trusting his own instincts. One day, a close friend of his simply said, "You've changed," and not in a good way. That comment was the wake-up call Chris needed. He realized he wasn't acting like himself. He had become the person someone else had shaped him into. That's when he drew the line. He walked away, took time to heal, and began to rebuild his confidence. With every passing day, the fog lifted, and his self-assurance returned. Not because someone handed it back to him, but because he rediscovered who he was without the toxic influence. So, how do you handle someone who's trying to erode your confidence? First, recognize that it's intentional. Their comments aren't mistakes. They are calculated attempts to make you doubt yourself. Second, protect your mental space. Write down your strengths, your achievements, and your values. Keep them close and remind yourself of them often. Third, surround yourself with people who lift you up, who speak truth into your life, and who see your potential, not people who feed your insecurities. At the end of the day, confidence doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from knowing who you are, even when others try to make you forget. Don't give them that power. Reclaim your voice, rebuild your strength, and remember, no one can destroy what you refuse to surrender. Number 7, they offer fake reconciliation. Let's talk about one of the most deceptive tactics a manipulator uses when they've lost their grip on you: fake reconciliation. This is the final play when all other attempts to control you have failed. You've set your boundaries, stood your ground, and walked away. You've broken free from their influence. So now, they flip the script. Suddenly, they're kind again, apologetic, and gentle. They say things like, "I've been doing a lot of thinking," or "I miss how things used to be." It all feels real, sincere, and convincing, doesn't it? But here's the catch. Under the surface, it's all part of the same agenda: control. When nothing else works, manipulators will act kind again. But it's not about healing or reconciliation. It's about regaining your trust and resetting the cycle. They want back in, not to make amends, but to continue where they left off, only this time, they're smarter, more careful, and more charming. They'll mirror your growth, pretend they've changed, and promise that things will be different. But the moment you let your guard down, the same patterns re-emerge. The criticisms, the guilt trips, the passive-aggressive control, all of it returns, slowly at first, then suddenly, just like before. This is where Stoic clarity becomes vital. As Epictetus once said, "He who does not observe deceit is not truly wise." And there's a quote that cuts even deeper. Be careful who you let back in. The snake only sheds its skin to grow larger. Both of these pieces of wisdom remind us of the same truth. Wisdom isn't about blindly forgiving others. It's about recognizing the patterns. A change in tone doesn't always mean a change in heart. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Naomi, had cut off an emotionally draining, manipulative ex. For months, she stuck to her decision. She went no contact, focused on healing, and worked on her personal growth. Then, one day, he showed up again, apologizing, saying he'd been going to therapy, admitting he'd been wrong. Naomi was cautious but curious. She let him back into her life slowly, carefully observing his actions. For a while, things seemed better. He was kind, respectful, and seemingly different. But then, little by little, the same old behaviors crept back in. The subtle criticisms, the guilt trips, the passive control. It wasn't change. It was adaptation. He hadn't changed. He'd just learned to be more careful this time around. Naomi realized the truth. He hadn't genuinely changed. He had just found a new way to manipulate her. So how do you handle someone who offers fake reconciliation? First, take your time. Real change is consistent, not dramatic. Don't rush into anything. Observe their actions over time. Second, look at their actions, not their words. Are they respecting your boundaries, or are they just trying to soften them? Third, ask yourself, do I really want this person in my life? Or am I just tempted by the version they're pretending to be? At the end of the day, not every apology deserves an open door. Protect your peace. Forgive if you choose, but never forget the pattern. Because when someone shows you who they truly are, over and over again, the wise thing isn't to hope they'll change. It's to believe them and then walk away stronger. Final thought. Manipulation is a subtle, often invisible force that can erode your sense of self and your peace of mind. But by recognizing these tactics, whether it's shaming, playing the victim, spreading lies, isolating, using guilt, destroying confidence, or offering fake reconciliation, you take back control. The key to protecting yourself lies in understanding that manipulators rely on your emotional responses, your empathy, and your desire to maintain harmony. Stoicism teaches us to master our reactions and to make decisions based on wisdom, not manipulation. When you recognize these behaviors for what they are, you can set healthy boundaries with clarity, not cruelty. And above all, remember that peace isn't something to be bargained for. It's something you deserve. Don't let anyone steal your tranquility. Trust your judgment, protect your heart, and always remember that real love and respect never require manipulation. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to like and subscribe for more powerful tips on building mental strength and protecting your peace. Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you.